Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French and English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamzalai.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our sixth episode of season 17, a very special guest and misdiagnosed patient of brain tumor, Christine Michaelis. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Christine, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for listening. Like you just said, I'm Christine and Michaelis, but I will not challenge anyone to pronounce it correctly. Originally from Germany, but apparently it's a Greek name. Who knows where we all come from? So that will do just fine. Like I just mentioned, I'm originally from Germany, but I left Germany actually 14 years ago, living in different kind of countries, and started my own adventures, let's say my entrepreneurial journey, becoming a business owner about 12 years ago, supporting entrepreneurs and startups.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Christina. Christina, sorry. Before we started the podcast, when we had our pre-podcast call, you mentioned about this misdiagnosis of brain tumor. So what happened? What doctor misdiagnosed you? And what did they see on the CAT scan or the MRI to be able to determine that that may have been a brain tumor?
Yes, and I have to say, you're doing that very well, saying may have been. The doctor wasn't like that. They diagnosed me actually with a brain tumor, which was quite a shocking experience and led into my journey searching for happiness, and we get into that. However, basically, if I go way back, for over 20 years, I'm basically, I wouldn't say suffering. A lot of people say suffering from tinnitus, so that ringing in both ears, which is mainly stress related, let's say. And I've done back in the days all kind of therapies that they suggested, also injections and oxygen therapies and stuff like that. But however, nothing worked. And 20 years in, I thought maybe I get it checked again, because who knows, maybe there's new things that came out 20 years into the research. So I went to a doctor and they said, okay, let's do a scan of your head just to make sure everything is okay with your ears. And I'm telling you all of this because otherwise, if I say, oh, they did a scan of my head, the question would be why. That's basically why. And 2 weeks after the scan, which was already extremely difficult for me because I'm a bit claustrophobic, and it was an MRI scan where you go into the tube, and oh my God, it was a horrible experience. The doctor said, oh, we have good news. There's nothing wrong with your ears. However, you have a brain tumor. And I was like, what? And I'm sitting there, and that was in the UK. And me not being a native English-speaking person, let's say, even though obviously my English is okay, and I was living there for many years and things like that. And I would say also, if a German doctor would have given me all that information that that person then was giving me, I would not have understood, because he was just using language that no one is using. But anyway, he said, I can't give you too much now information because it's not my expertise. So I was like, he left me with this diagnosis and saying, okay, now you have to do some further tests and you need to go to a specialist, to an endocrinologist, which I also didn't know who it was. It's someone that is looking at your hormones and your blood and stuff like this. Yes. So basically, I did lots of tests there. They took a lot of blood, which I also didn't like. I think most people don't. There are lots of more other scans. And luckily, I have to say, I had a private health insurance. So it was, in air quotes, fast, because it just took 3 months and instead of a year or so, to actually then find out that it wasn't a brain tumor. And what it actually is that my pituitary gland, which sits behind the eyes, let's say, and that's responsible for the hormones in your blood, is like a full moon shape, and usually it's like a half moon shape. And that led him to believe and to tell me that I do have a brain tumor. So I'm not regretting any of this, because first of all, there's nothing you can do about it in the past. But second of all, it led to beautiful things in my life, because I was really overworked. There were lots of other health issues in family, and I was very close to burnout when that diagnosis came. So it was a very difficult year. But it led me to question things in my life, my priorities in life, my work, and the amount of work I was doing, and the stress I was going through, and led me on this path of finding out what happiness actually means to me. And then that developed into a whole book of the happiness formula. But that basically, so there's always, in hindsight, you can say, beautiful things that come out of it, and we learn from our experiences. But that's basically the story behind it.
But let me ask you, I know that the pituitary gland deals with production of human growth hormone, and those who have too much activity of the pituitary gland usually are 6, 7, 8 feet tall. But was yours underproducing the HGH or overproducing it? What exactly was wrong with the pituitary gland?
Well, the thing is, nothing is wrong apart from it being too big. But my hormone levels and everything is fine. So the doctor said in the end, you don't even need to monitor anything, because everything looks fine in your blood and your hormones and everything. However, the shape is just double the size than it should be, but it's not overproducing or underproducing anything, which is quite strange. If we look at it from a spiritual point of view, which I also didn't know, is quite nice, because it means I'm more connected to the universe, which makes a lot of sense now, I understand, which also led me not only to look more into happiness, but also into spirituality, because someone told me that. But if you connect to the universe, you have a more direct line. So I really like that. So I see that as a positive.
That's beautiful. So okay, so now we're talking about the spiritual aspect of things when it comes to, not take things for granted, really appreciate life, especially after this misdiagnosed, that if it was going to be brain tumor, what stage level it was. So again, there was a lot of question that you had with your oncologist, etc. So what changes in your life have you made, Christine, after this diagnosis? Have you said that, oh my God, I mean, they don't even give me too much information? Does that mean that the diagnosis is even worse than what they were supposed to give me? And so on and so forth. So what changes have you made?
So when they gave me the diagnosis, the first thing I did, which pretty much everyone does probably and shouldn't, is I went onto Google, typed in the terms that he gave me, which then gave me basically, you're going to die. So that was obviously quite dramatic. I called my best friend back then, crying, saying, I'm going to die. She was obviously super shocked and everything. I did not tell my family that. I did not call them and tell them that. I was calming down even over a few days, and said they found something the way the doctor should have told me. They found something and they will investigate a bit further, but nothing to worry about. Was basically lying a bit to myself. And I'm a person who's very good at putting stuff away with these things. I can put that back into the brain, in the back of the brain, and not touch it for a while until there's some clarity, which doesn't mean that it didn't stress me. Now I know, and which doesn't mean that it didn't make a lot of, started a lot of things. And so what I started is questioning what I'm doing in life, because if and at some point in life it will be that way, because we're all going to die. That's not what it's about, but it's really thinking about it before you have maybe something like that happening to you, or a message delivered to you. Or usually people reprioritize things in their life because something bad was delivered to them. Someone died, or they were diagnosed with something bad, or something really shocking happened, usually in a negative way, that they start questioning things and they make changes in their life to live life to the fullest. I was always someone who loved to enjoy as much as I could things, but like I said, I was working really, really a lot, 7 days a week, and at least 10 to 12 hours a day. So that changed because I was like, I'm not living here this life. Who knows what happens afterwards? But this life just to work and be stressed about it, because I absolutely loved what I was doing and still do, but I need to find this work-life balance. And I think that's also a problem most entrepreneurs have, that they don't have this work-life balance because they're so in love with what they do that they don't even realize that they're overworking themselves. So this was a big change, that I worked less, achieving the same results. And I made space for time with loved ones on purpose, calling up family on a more regular basis because they were in a different country, or are still in a different country to where I am now. So making space and active time, spending with them time on the phone or flying over also more often, as well as with friends also that I have in the same country where I live, and just reprioritizing life over work, and really enjoy as much as you can, and don't go, I don't get too hooked up on small things anymore that maybe were annoying or something. So it really shifted everything, how I see things, made me a bit more relaxed with certain things, and also with people, showing more understanding and being open to new things, and doing also more things that I probably wasn't daring before.
I
So
see.
lots of things.
That's amazing change. Actually, let me ask you a very tricky question here, Christine. For example, if you take example of people that are driving fast, okay, and or those who are taking drugs or whatever it is, and then when they survive the incident, and it doesn't mean that they will stop doing it. They come back and doing the same thing. Do you think that after the misdiagnosis and telling you that you were perfectly fine, did you have a tendency to go back into wanting to work again harder, to say, oh, I missed a bullet, I'm indestructible, let me go back into my old habits?
Yeah.
Or did you completely change? Because that's been what, 3 months from the time that you were misdiagnosed, and after all the tests, the blood tests, etc., for them to give you the real diagnosis. So for the 3 months you were on the edge, but after that, did you feel that you was going to go back to your old habits?
No, would be the short answer. A bit of a more explanation is that this wasn't an overnight change. So I wasn't able, I was probably able, like time-wise and work-wise, to do it immediately if we were looking at working hours. But it was more a mind shift for me that takes time. It's not that you have something like this and then all of a sudden you don't do anything. Well, at least not for me. What I did, I started slowly to reduce working hours. I said, okay, I'm not going to work Sundays and I'm not going to work evenings. Okay, I'm going to have a proper lunch break and not sit and eat in front of the computer responding to emails. Oh, actually, I don't want to work Saturdays either anymore. So I just want to have like a regular 9 to 5, like they say, even less if possible. And I'm still working on that. And that is many years ago now. But I managed to bring back bit by bit, basically, and reduce the working hours. So it's not an overnight thing. So for that, no, I wouldn't want to go back, and I didn't go back into the old patterns. However, it took a while, of course, to get to a stage where I am now, and I'm still reducing things.
And now when it comes to realizing the importance about spending time with family and friends and having the good work-life balance, because this is a very common problem I see, Christine, not just in the US, but all over the world. Those who are so eager to be able to succeed, or those who are the hyperachievers, etc., the work-life balance does not exist. And it's only when time of crisis that you start realizing that it is really important to really put time with family, to put time with friends, with work. So what would you advise our listeners, who doesn't necessarily mean that they've been misdiagnosed or that are unfortunately diagnosed with cancer? Does it really need to have something so drastic to start changing your approach or your perspective?
So I think it doesn't need to be, but I think the humans need it, and which doesn't mean I wish it for anyone to happen. What I would suggest is to put yourself into a mindset as if something would have happened, maybe that makes you revisit things. So there is something that's called the death meditation. Might sound quite dramatic, but that's that can really be a very emotional experience. Then there is, I know someone who lived 1 year of his life as if it was his last. So he intentionally put in, okay, I'm going to live this life as if I'm not there anymore. And that changed dramatically his life to the positive, whatever that means for that person, of course. I think it's also advisable to think about who you surround yourself with. So I'm, for example, I have a partner who's employed and who has a 9-to-5 job. If I would still work on weekends or evenings, that would probably stress the relationship massively, and wouldn't probably work even. And a lot of times, people who do work a lot like this, they might have partners, if they don't have family, as in children, they usually have partners that are also workaholics, let's call them like that, whatever you want to call them. So they have the understanding of the other person, and the other person even works maybe even more. And so that's a bit tricky to get out of that. And then also when you have specific friend circle or something, so depending in what kind of circles you are in, you might have to remove or see those people less. And if we're talking about drugs, something that you used as an example, for sure, that these are environments that you have to get out of, because I mean, luckily I never had that problem, and I won't be able to judge that. However, if someone is addicted, and I did have addiction problems in the family, then I know you have to get out of these circles to be able then to shift into different patterns, because it's easy to get back into that. And you said the same with work addiction. So real workaholics, they want that, they need that high achievements. And then another thing, and I'm someone, I constantly have to produce. Still, I know that's me, and I love crossing things off my to-do list. But in that way, then if you recognize, so observe yourself and see what makes you tick, what really gives you that satisfaction, and then implement little doses of that. So if you know, I like getting things done, put things on your to-do list that are super easy and fast to be done, and then you can cross it off. So you have that feeling of achievement. Yes. And I do that all the time. And have a not to-do list. Things that you do not to do, put that on there. Because if you work in to-do lists and getting things done, putting something on a list that you don't want to get done or don't have to get done can work very well, speaking from experience.
That's interesting. So the not to-do list, so then what's the point of having a not to-do list if it's not even in the future that you want to accomplish? So is it something for them to just detach themselves from the responsibility or the obligation to having to always accomplish something?
Yes, and it's just so you have really thought through, okay, what happens if I don't do this? And the answer would have been nothing will happen if you don't do it. Nothing positive, nothing negative. And that means you don't actually have to do it. And then you can put it on a to-do list. So you had that this process, this thought process in your head, and you probably will not then take this bit off your not to-do list and put it back on your to-do list.
I see. So let's become more practical here, Christine, because
yes,
what you just mentioned is very key element to helping people know how to balance this work life. Okay. So let's say if you would advise people to write down a list of things that they feel has to be done within what? A 1 week span, a 1 month span? What is the short term in terms of weeks that they need to accomplish the to-do list versus the things that they could leave into the back burner?
Well, I actually have 3 lists. I have a to-do list, because the to-do list will never be empty. That's the other thing. You can easily, even if you're a high achiever, you can get into overwhelm and you start procrastinating on things. So even if you're someone who loves getting things done, that can also happen, and it will happen. So understanding that a to-do list is never empty is a good thing to understand. I create a to-do list. Out of my to-do list, I create to-do lists with 3 things, maybe 4, maybe 2 that I have to get done. On purpose, I leave time. I'm very good at knowing how much it will take me to get something done on that list. So I know, okay, these 3 things, they will take me 4 hours to do. So I know I will leave some time during the day, depending on how long your working day is, that you set yourself. It's also one rule. You should set yourself working hours and not just say, you can always shorten that, but never extend if possible. And then you leave space for things that will come in during the day, because there's always something that you didn't expect that will take up time of your day. So don't plan out that day too much and pack it full of your 8-hour, 6-hour workday, whatever it is. Then leave that to-do list there when you need it, and pick up new things for the next day. And like I said, go through that to-do list and have a think of what you actually don't have to do, and put that on the not to-do list. And that can really help to keep that there as a reminder, though. Don't just delete it. Actually putting it on the list is a good reminder.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've adapted a new approach, Christine, which is very similar. So on my desktop, I have a 3-screen monitor. Okay. And I use an application on Microsoft. It's sticky notes. So I put those sticky notes all over my computer, and I also do the today's list. I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday until Sunday, because I work 7 days. And what I do is that I do done or to do. And then by the end of the week, I see how many of done were accomplished and which of to do that were left off. So the next week, I put them a priority. And then I continue eliminating those responsibilities or those obligations week after week. So I feel that this has been extremely productive. And now I have a vision. I could see what's going on, versus just all in my head, that it was just piling and piling and piling up. And before I knew it, I was overwhelmed, as you mentioned, which created not procrastination per se, this is a harsh word, but more of, okay, that I was transforming an obligation to something that could be done later on. Instead of like making it a priority, I deprioritized it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one really, really important point is that if we're talking about self-care, that you be a bit flexible as well, because also me, someone can be very rigid. Okay, I put that on the list, so that means I have to do that today. And unless there's an external deadline where you really have to, because I don't know, maybe you're speaking at an event or something and need to prepare for that, you shouldn't have those deadlines that can't be moved a bit. So it's always good to put yourself the deadlines a bit in advance, and then you can move it a bit, because there might be days where you're not feeling well. There might be days where other things come in that take over that priority. And then, like you said, things get deprioritized, and then all of a sudden they get pushed up the list, and then they get